I sure wish some of those PhDs that I interview all the time, some of those very reputable scientists, could listen to what Jim Sparks is saying tonight. Those fellows who say, well, give me some proof. As you listen to Jim Sparks, I think you would conclude, as I think they would conclude, that it would be worth a few investigative dollars to look into this because it's really happening. It's going to unfold before your ears this night. Jim Sparks is my guest. I'm Art Bell. In basic training, having a drill sergeant right up in your face with invective and screaming is quite enough to terrify the hell out of a basic recruit, I can assure you. Jim, you said you went through a kind of basic, and they gave you punishment and reward of what sort?
Well, from the very first moment on board, and particularly, again, the first 18 months were like this, and then it tapered off a little, but again, after 6 years, I kind of look forward to telling you what happened after that. But from the very first day, the letter A, just the letter A appeared on that on the screen in front of me that I was mentioning.
Yes.
And then an equivalent, which I thought was an alien language. Well, I later now know more what that is, but I didn't know what was going on at the time. To the letter A was next to it, and they wanted me to trace that equivalent of A with my right forefinger on that table in front of me. And so there would be like a demonstration of how to do the A, which it was one stroke to the right, one stroke to the left, one stroke to the right. Uh-huh. And then I yelled out, no. And, of course, who are you? Why are you doing this? And so one thing I've learned about them, and for a fact, they can't stand questions, and I can get into that later. Just you don't ask them questions; they tell you when they want you to know something, and that's just all there is to it. And there's no other way around it. But anyhow, I screamed and yelled, "No, I won't do that." Well, immediately after that, the air pressure in the room increased with a thump, like thump, and there was pain in my ears, and I just went, "Ow!" And then again, A, and I could hear this in my brain. And I didn't hear it in my ears. I heard just the word A, and I went, no. And then the air pressure increased again until the pain was even more. And every time I refused to do it, it just kept stepping up in levels and levels and levels until it got to the point where I couldn't take it. And I did the strokes for the letter A. And then all of a sudden, a sense of euphoria. Where you just feel no pain, you feel real comfortable, and that made me real mad. See, I was really hard. And I said, I know what you're doing, you know. It's like I'm some laboratory mouse. Here, mouse, have a piece of cheese, and I'm not going to enjoy this euphoria. But and it was painful, it hurt, and then, boom, I would be back home, and, well, there's just so much to say in that regard.
It sounds kind of like a basic intelligence test, Jim, which would indicate to me that if they were only trying to get you to trace an A, obviously they wanted to see if you could do it, or they wanted to see if they could force you to do it, or I'm not sure what the motivation of this was, but it could have been just a very basic intelligence test, which would indicate they didn't know a whole lot about us at that point.
They didn't, and what they were actually teaching, which I was resistant to it at the time, and you're right, they didn't. They just didn't. They just have their way of thinking, and we're human, and they're not. It's just that simple. But it turned out to be something where you can take 20 pages of text in a symbol the size of a quarter. Look, they could show it to you, and you could absorb all the text and know exactly what it was. That's what all this was leading to. But it took years for me because I wouldn't cooperate with them, and then, you know, I would have the abductions were happening 2-3 times a week, week after week, month after month. I remember, you know, I ran, and I'm straightforward and honest, and everybody knew me that way, and I ran to the church with it, and they said, oh, gee, this is demonic. My family thought I lost it. My friends were going like, what is with you, Jim? But I stuck to my story, and I did for a long time, several months in the beginning, until I realized that, hey, and I even tried to run from these guys. I kept my mouth shut about it. I realized that just people weren't going to believe me, and that was it. And so I just tolerated all this stuff for many years just on my own.
Jim, there are a lot of abductees that have tried different schemes to prevent being abducted, putting video cameras up, putting alarm systems in, and on and on and on and on. Did you try any of that?
Well, I was kind of like a cave. I had the sort of like the caveman approach. Again, I was just so filled with hatred. When I realized how people reacted to this, it really wasn't in me to try and prove it was true at that point. What I wanted to do was make it stop. So I did things which I laugh about, but like I tried different things because they create some kind of field which makes them walk through walls. They can just do it. I stuck with the fact this is technology. It's nothing else. Don't sway from it, Jim. Don't think they're anything other than some advanced creatures with high technology. So I tried things like I would, at the time, as you said, I was in Houston, so I would check out a hotel room in the middle of a super large hotel in the middle of downtown Houston, thinking, okay, I can be here and they won't get me, and they would get me. I drove hundreds of miles, and I'd check out motels to try and get away, and they'd find me there. And then I would go from state to state. Needless to say, it messed up my business pretty good. It knew wonders for my marriage at the time. And, of course,
did your marriage hold together?
No, actually it didn't. It did after things got better with the interaction with them, but our marriage, for other reasons, did not. So,
how about business, Jim?
It went in those early years. I had a buffer because I was the type that worked, all the time, 10, 12, 14, 16 hours a day at what I was doing, and so I had a pretty good buffer, and so I was able to rely on that for several years afterwards, and then it went down, and then it went back up, and then, as I adjusted to all of this, things were a lot better.
Okay, so this boot camp, Jim, was in order to get you to be absorbing large amounts of information very quickly. Is that what it was all about?
Well, as it turned out, that's just one of the things, and but the reward and punishment sessions became a little more interesting, even though I was highly resistant for a long period of time. But then the rewards would be things like they would answer a question. So if I cooperated, after the letter A came the letter B, and I just couldn't believe it. It was weeks or a month or more before that's how resistant I was to not cooperating, to where you finally went to the letter B, then it went to the letter C, all the way through. No Q's and no Z's. Don't ask me why. And also a number system that was based on a 6 base, and the symbols for all of that. And but I could, at the end of if I cooperated, and it started to get kind of cool, because if I cooperated, I got to go home faster. That was one thing. Then I could ask a question and get an answer, something they don't like. One thing about us humans is we just can't help ourselves. We're always going to ask questions. Who are you? Where are you from? Why you're here? Why you this?
And are those the initial questions you did ask?
As I started to understand their nature, I would ask basic questions, but I started seeing what they were like and what other people would be around them and what they were so used to hearing or absorbing. I don't know if they hear. And so I would plan questions based around something other than that what perhaps they wouldn't expect. And I think that it drew a lot of attention to me at times. Now, there are some other parts of the reward sessions were that I could play with some gizmos, meaning that, is it okay for me to go to that?
It is, but just before you do, if you wouldn't mind, you would ask a question vocally. They would give you an answer, which I presume was given to you mentally?
Yes, it was always telepathic. They never spoke.
Okay, can you give me a couple of examples of questions and answers you got?
Well, who are you?
Uh-huh.
Who are you? And I asked that and screamed that and yelled that for months and months.